Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Tonight, we have Animation Chronicles. Actually, not the reveals I was expecting at all. I was expecting, if anything, for them to go heavy on coming down the stretch for like Duelist Nexus, but we actually get the first reveals for Animation Chronicle, including the cover art, which is very cool. We have a new print for Junk Warrior, which is awesome. This is his like quintessential pose. You see it in like the first couple episodes. He summons it like every duel Yusei does in like the early on in the show, and he does this pose, and I always thought it was badass. But yeah, very cool. That's cool artwork. We'll eventually get in the TCG, probably. But yeah, let's get into it. We got a ton of cards. Let's jump in. Starting off here, we have a couple new Dinosaur cards. Just really throwing dinosaurs at us from all over the place. By the way, if my eyes look red, it's because they are. They're itchy as hell right now. I think it's because of my allergies, but it is killing me. But I'm battling through. All right, Kaito Terra. This is a wind dinosaur effect monster. It's level 4, 1410 for the stats. You can only use the second and third effects of this card once per turn. If your opponent controls 2 or more non-wind face-up monsters, those monsters cannot target this card for attacks. That's terrible. I thought that was going to be an extension effect. Like, if your opponent has 2 non-winds, you can summon this card from the hand, but not quite. So, whatever. It's a throwaway effect. Second effect, during your main phase, you can add a Polymerization from your deck to your hand. I mean, that's something. That's just a +1 for a generic fusion card. Cool. And if this card becomes banished ever, you can special summon it, then add a Polymerization from your graveyard to your hand. That's interesting as well. I mean, it is graveyard. If it was decked, then that'd be crazy. I mean, even stuff like Gold Sarcophagus making this card like kind of insane, right? Just banish it from deck. It's a free body on field that then would get you Poly, but you have to have it engraved. But that's still not the worst, because like you search Poly to start with the first effect, then you use him for something, get him banished from grave, and then he triggers again to get you a body and the Poly back to hand. Poly's not once per turn, so that's actually a pretty decent card. I actually don't hate that card. The question will be like, do you really want this to be your normal summon? That's what it'll come down to. We actually have a new fusion as well. This is Horned Saurus. A Dark Dino Fusion, level 6, 2k, 18 for the stats. Kaito Terra specifically, which does mean that you can fusion deployment this out. That's actually kind of broken. So now we can fusion deployment this out, search Poly, and now we have a body plus Poly already. Interesting. Okay, it takes a dinosaur or dragon monster on top of Terra. First and third effects are hard once per turns. If this card is fusion summoned, place a field spell from your deck or graveyard face up in your field zone. Whoa. Now that is a placement. It's not an activation, so you wouldn't be able to search off of any field spell that searches on activation, which tends to be most of the best field spells in the game, but I'm sure there's a couple that you can definitely wiggle around with and find something really powerful with. Stuff like Dragon's Ravine, stuff that just has an ignition effect, not a on activation effect. So, very cool. Can attack directly the turn it is special summoned. Okay, sure. Punch for 2k. And during your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves normal summon a dinosaur or dragon monster. That's even better with getting a field spell. Dragon Ravine dump, Absorrouter Dragon, search a rocket that maybe you've already normaled, and now you're able to just normal the rocket off of this. This is interesting. These cards are actually not terrible. I could actually see a world where these actually come up in a dinosaur / dragon / generic fusion deck build. That's pretty cool. Not bad. I like it. All right, moving on. We have Colorless, the Chaos King of Dark World. I've heard multiple people talk about this card as a famous card from the anime that was like so badass, but we never got, and we really wanted it. Well, now it's here, so no more complaining. Let's see. It's a level 12 Dark Fiend, of course. It's a Dark World monster. Level 12 is crazy. Question mark for the stats. It requires specifically Rainbow, Overlord of Dark World, and 2 or more Fiend monsters. So that's the only downside, is you need a specific name, and it's not one of the good names normally. It's not a card you normally want to play in the deck, plus 2 or more names. So, a little bit tough, but luckily the new Quick Play Fusion for Dark Worlds can, I believe, does it banish from grave? So you can use materials from grave or discard as well. So like it actually does do a pretty efficient fusion summon. All right, no hard once per turns here. If this card is fusion summoned, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. Whoa. And on top of that, like I said, the new fusion for Dark Worlds is a quick play spell. So potentially just being able to quick play summon this on the opponent's turn and wipe everything is pretty powerful. This card's original attack and effects become the number of fusion materials used for it times 1,000, so at least 3,000, 3k, 3k, if not bigger. Again, we can banish from grave, so, banish 5 from grave. Dark Worlds do a pretty good job at loading your graveyard up. That's cool. And the third effect, once per turn, quick effect, you can target a face-up card you control, discard a card, and if you do, your opponent cannot target that card with card effects this turn. I actually don't really care about the targeting protection that much. I actually care more about the fact that it just gives you a quick effect discard as effect. So obviously just getting you the utility of getting stuff out of the hand, pitching something like a Grapha to pop an extra card. Not a bad card overall. Now, is it going to be worth playing it? Are we really going to play Rainbow just to make this card playable? I'm not so sure about that, but it's still a really interesting card nonetheless. I will say that. So if you're a Dark World player, let me know down below for sure if this card you think it's actually could have some legs to it. Moving on from there, we have Combat Wheel. This is a Synchro monster, from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds that we never got. This is an Earth Machine Synchro, 2,500 attack, 1,200 defense, level 6, completely generic. The first time this card would be destroyed by an opponent's card effect each turn, it's not. Okay, not bad protection. Once per opponent's battle phase. Oof. You can discard one card. This card gains attack equal to half the total attack of all other face-up monsters you currently control. Then place a counter on this card. Also, your opponent's monsters cannot attack monsters for attacks except this one. If this card with a counter is destroyed by battle, destroy all monsters you control. This card's terrible. Nothing crazy here. Just an anime card. We get more of the treasure cards. This old man, right? This old man plays these in 5Ds early on. Ashoka Pillar, Earth Rock effect monster, level 3, 0 attack, 2,200 defense. You can only use the first effect once per turn. If this card is summoned, so normal or special, you can add an equip spell from your deck to your hand, and then if this card's in attack position, change it to defense position. Wow. Okay, I actually like that. Whoa, there's some good generic, like equip spells at this point in the game. There's some good extent, like just reborn, like monster reborn type equip spells. There's Infernal Knight Durendal, just search, a fire warrior. That could just be an extender potentially. And it's a rock, so like that could even be something you could play in something like Emancipator that you could just summon off of a excavation, then search an extender. Not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, also when it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you take 2,000. The goal is probably going to be to link this off or synchro it off or whatever before you have to let it get destroyed, so that's not a huge deal. Cabrera Stone. This is an Earth Rock level 1 0/0 monster. First effect's a hard once per turn. If this card is summoned, you can add a Triangle 0 or Triangle O from your deck to your hand. And then if this card is in attack position, change it to defense. If this card is destroyed, take 1,000. Triangle O, I believe, is right here. Yeah, so, okay. Well, it's a +1, but we'll see how good it really is, depending on this card. Triangle O is a normal spell with 2 effects, but you can only use 1 effect per turn, not both. The first effect says, if you control Crystal Skull, Ashoka Pillar, and Cabrera Stone, destroy all cards on the field. Also this turn, your opponent takes any effect damage you would have taken instead. That's pretty insane, because these guys try to burn you when they're destroyed, so I'm assuming the other one burns as well, so you could potentially just wipe the board and burn your opponent for 4,000. So that's actually kind of powerful, but you have to obviously get them all set up. I'm assuming that's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. Second effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a Crystal Skull, Ashoka Pillar, and Cabrera Stone in grave, shuffle them into the deck, then draw 3 cards. I think for what it wants to do, if it resolves, it's decently powerful. On the next turn, you're drawing 3, so you're completely reloading. On that turn, it resolves, you're wiping the board and burning your opponent for a ton of damage. It's fine. I think these cards. I don't think these cards really have much legs, but I do think this card, potentially just as a generic card, could actually be something interesting. For sure. And the last card here for these new cards, Totem Pole, Continuous Trap. Your opponent cannot target rock monsters with 0 attack. With card effects, once per battle, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can negate the attack, then place a counter on this card. Okay. And if this card has 3 counters, send it to the graveyard. Terrible. If you have 3 or more monsters with 0 attack and different names in your graveyard, banish this card from your graveyard, and any effect damage your opponent takes this turn is doubled. Terrible. This card's awful. And the last card we have, or last cards we have here are actually Playmaker cards. So hopefully some cool cyber stuff here. We have Drastic Draw, a normal spell. You can only activate one card with this card's name, or with this card's name per turn. You cannot normal summon or special summon monsters the turn you activate this card, except cybers. Okay, that's not a terrible restriction if you're just on a cybers deck. Banish all monsters you control, a minimum of 2, to draw 3 cards. Holy crap. That is really interesting. Holy shit. Whoa. It's probably not worth it because you got to get 2 bodies on field. That's already worth so much in Cyberse. That's already access code. That's a heat soul. And this card obviously gets hella punished by Ash. So, I mean, it's an interesting card, but I'm just not sure it's like truly going to be worth it overall. But interesting. All right, 2 trap cards to finish us out. We have Transaction Rollback. It's a normal trap. You can only use one of its 2 effects once per turn and only once that turn. Pay half your life points, then target a normal trap in your opponent's graveyard, except for another copy of itself. This effect becomes that trap card's effect when this card is or when that card would be activated. That's interesting. Okay, but very matchup dependent. You can banish this card from your graveyard and pay half your life points to target a normal trap card in your graveyard, except for another copy of itself. This effect becomes that trap card's effect when this is activated. This is really interesting. It's too matchup dependent, but could be a sideable card if you're on a deck where like a certain deck like kind of beats itself if its own cards are activated against it. That's pretty interesting. I think about stuff like Dinomorphia, pays a ton of life points as well, which Dinomorphia wants to do. That could be interesting, but yeah, cool. And the final one here is Code Hack. Unfortunately, not a Signet card, so none of these look searchable. Cyberse Link monsters you control, it's a continuous. Cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. That's actually not terrible. It's pretty good protection. Once per turn during the battle step, if your monster battles an opponent's monster, you could change that opponent's monster's attack to 0 until the end of this turn. And if you do, neither monster can be destroyed by that battle. Also, neither player takes battle damage. Okay. When your opponent activates a card or effect during the damage step while your Code Talker monster attacks, you can banish this card from your graveyard and negate the activation. If you do, the attacking monster gains 700. This card's terrible. Unfortunately, nothing here that I think really will stick. Drastic Draw is funny and really cheeky, but I think it's too much to get. Like, Cyberse makes such powerful value off of like even just 2 monsters on field that banishing them is a little bit rough. So, yeah. But yeah, some interesting stuff here. I think Ashoka Pillar is really interesting. I think this card could be interesting for Dark Worlds. I think the 2 dinos are pretty interesting for like a generic fusion deck or something with dinos and fusions and dragons, maybe something cool there. And unfortunately, I think these kind of missed the mark, even though you could have argued like, ooh, Link support, like Links are strong, like let's see, but unfortunately a whiff there. But it's Animation Chronicle. Animation Chronicle is one of those sets where you're going to have a couple hits here or there. For the most part, it's going to be more anime stuff, but eventually we'll find way more like actual, eventually there's going to be a handful of cards that actually do have some really intriguing stuff. But very cool. I'll keep you posted there. Again, expecting a ton of Dune support down the next couple days. I mean, we're 10 days away pretty much from the set coming out in the OCG. We still have 33 unrevealed cards. That's a ton. I'll obviously bring you that when that stuff drops. But I'm Manny for tonight. Let me know your thoughts down below on anything here. If there's anything particularly interesting to you, anything I didn't mention that should be mentioned on any of these new cards. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.